Okay, so we're going to go over number 16 to 25 from the review. So on number 16, actually that's fairly straightforward. I wouldn't suppose anybody would have trouble with that one. 17 is not hard, it's just tedious, and there's so many chances to make a careless mistake. So I numbered my three equations, 1, 2, and 3. I chose two of them. I chose 1 and 2, and I chose to make the z drop out. Multiplied the top equation by 2, and then I think the 3 was from my second time through. So wrote down those, got an equation with just x and y. Then I chose 1 and 3, also dropped the z out, got another equation, and then used those two equations to drop out a variable. I solved for y, and then it was just back substitution to come up with the other ones. So hopefully you're okay on that. Okay, number 18 was a word problem. Admission into an amusement park for 4 children and 5 adults cost $162.25. And so, just write it down just like it sounds. I used a C for children, that seemed to make sense, and an A for adults. 4 children plus 5 adults cost $162.25. And 2 children and 4 adults cost $114.50. And then we're asked to determine the cost of admission for one child and the cost of admission for one adult. So you're just solving for A and solving for C. Not really any different from what we just did in the other problems, except that you had to write the equations. So hopefully you're good with that. Number 19, you were asked to graph that conic section, but in order to graph it, you had to do a whole lot of other work. So here's the process. Notice that the x is squared and the y is squared, so we're going to end up with either one of the conic sections, but not a parabola. Remember, your conic sections are your parabola, your circle, the ellipse, and the hyperbola. So what I did was I factored and I set it up to complete the square. So out of the x's, I factored out, it needs to be just an x squared, so I factored out the 16, which made this an x squared plus 4x plus a blank to complete the square. Then I have a plus. I factored out the 9, so then I had y squared minus 2y plus a blank, set it up to complete the square, equals 71 plus blank plus blank. Then over here, you take half of the middle term and you square it. That's where the 4 came from. But notice it's a 64 over here. And that's because you have to multiply the 6 times 4, and that's why it's 64. Likewise here, you take half of the negative 2, which is negative 1, square it, you get 1, but you have to multiply, it's a 9 times 1, so it's a 9 over here. So then I end up with this, what I have in blue. But if you remember, the general equation is x minus h quantity squared over a squared plus y minus h quantity squared over b squared equals 1. So I needed this to be 1, so I divided by 144. So I do that to everything. So here is my equation. Because it's a plus in the middle, I know now that it's an ellipse. The center is negative 2, 1. That's the h and k. So then I can mark the center when I graph it, negative 2, 1. And if you take the square root of 9, you get 3. So that tells you from the center to go 3 to the right and 3 to the left. And if you take the square root of 16, you get 4. So from the center, you go up 4 and down 4. Then you can draw your ellipse. The endpoints of the major axes is the longer one, would be negative 2, 5 and negative 2, negative 3. The minor axes would be the shorter, and the endpoint of the minor axes is 1, 1 and negative 5, 1. So that would be all the things you would need. You don't need to have all the focus and all the additional parts, so it's fine if you just have this. On number 20, you set it up exactly the same way. So you can look at that part. I did all my factoring. It's a minus here. Be careful, because when you factor out the minus, that's going to make this a minus 4y. So, when you distribute, you would get the plus 16y. And then coming up with these over here. So you come up with this equation, which tells me the center is negative 1, 2. And that's my center. But remember, my center is not part of it. I guess it wasn't for the ellipse either. Then once I mark the center, the square root of 4 is 2, so I go 2 in each horizontal direction. The square root of 16 is 4, so I go up 4, down 4, and I build a box. And I draw the asymptotes in that are the diagonals of the box. Everything in blue is just a tool to help me get the graph. Because the x comes first, then it opens in the x direction. So I drew that in. Your asymptotes kind of help you guide where your graph is going to go. And the vertices would be 1, 2, and negative 3, 2. So the vertices of the hyperbola. Okay? On number 21, this is a parabola, but the y is squared instead of the x. I did this with our old method of parabolas. I did not use the conic section method. I kind of used what we had done in Algebra 2, except the y is squared. So note, I set it up, I solved for x. So when I solved for x, I got x equals this. I know it's going to open sideways because the y is squared instead of the x, and because there's a negative leading coefficient, it's going to open to the left. So I got that. So I need to find the vertex, and I could do the opposite of b over 2a, just like we did before. So I did the opposite of b, which would be negative 1/4 over 2 times negative 1/8. So I get a positive 1. However, this is the y value of the vertex because, we've got the x and y switched. So this is the y value of the vertex. So plug the 1 into the equation and you get the x value of the vertex, which is negative 2 and 7/8. So you can come over here to your graph and plot. We want to go, oops. Okay. I don't think it counts as a mistake when I catch it myself. Anyway, so the vertex is negative 2 and 7/8, comma 1. If you noticed what I had there before, I had the x and y switched, and you can see why I probably did that. So I plotted the point negative 2 and 7/8, 1, or just approximate. Then I'm going to use the parent graph, and we're going to the left because it's negative. So I would go up 1 and over 1, but I'm going to go over 1/8 instead. So up 1 and over 1/8 and down 1 and over 1/8. If I go up 2, normally I would have gone, because remember we're doing the up and over are backwards. So if you square a 2, you get 4, but it's times an eighth. So 4 times an eighth would be a half. I didn't plot that one, but if you do a 3, if you go up 3, square that, you get 9. So it'd be to the left 9/8. That one was kind of nice because if you go up 3 and to the left 9/8, you'll be right on a grid point. And then I just sketched it in. Okay, you could also use your calculator and plot points. I'm fine with that if you have a problem like that. I'm fine with you using your calculator, plotting points. You don't have to do using the parent graph to do that. All right, number 22 dealt with a sequence. And in this particular sequence, you can see if you are adding 6 each time, which makes it arithmetic. So then if you go to your formula sheet, which you'll want to have handy, we have a sub n equals a sub 1 plus n minus 1 times d. And we can plug in, by the way, we are looking for the sum. So we had to use that in a little bit. So if I plug in 23 is my a sub 1, we know d is 6. And I did a little, what did I do over here? I plugged in 71 as a sub n. So we had a sub n is 71. I actually jumped ahead. First, let me finish this. I filled in a 6 for d, and a sub 1 was 23. Then you distribute the 6, and you get a sub n equals, when you simplify, 6n plus 17. Then I counted this as a sub n because I needed to figure out what n was. So if 71 is a sub n, set that equal to 6n plus 17. You get n equals 9. And so that means I'm looking for s sub 9. I want the sum of those first 9 terms. So then I used my formula for that and plug it in, and you get the sum is 423. Number 23 is a geometric sequence. They tell you a sub 1 is 3. They tell you the common ratio is 2. And you are asked to find a sub 6 and s sub 6. So I started with my formula, a sub n, and filled in a 3 for a sub 1, filled in a 2 for r, And then we needed to find a sub 6, so I plugged in a 6 for n and came up with 96 for an answer. S sub 6, if you plug in your, well, this would be S sub n, the formula for S sub n. So we wanted to find S sub 6, so you fill in the value of r is 2, the value of a sub 1 is 3, the value of n is 6, and you're just crunching out the numbers, and we get 189 would be the sum. On number 24, you are asked to find the sum of the infinite series. So on this one, and I'm just looking and thinking, why do I have a part B? Oh, there is a part B. Okay, so they didn't label it part A and part B. So we have an infinite series that we're looking at. So I have 1/3 to the x minus 1 power. So think about what that means. If you start by filling in a 1, you get 1 minus 1 is 0. So that's why I have 1/3 to the 0 power plus. And then if you filled in a 2, you would get to the first power, and you would keep going. Now, you would keep going forever. So obviously you can't do it that way. But notice that a sub 1 is 1 because when you raise it to the 0 power, it's 1. So I guess I did need to get that from it. R is 1/3. And then you can use the form, because this is less than 1, you can use the formula for an infinite series. And when you do, you get 3/2. Then on part B, this one, the sum does not exist because look at the value of R. It has to be, R has to be between -1 and 1 in order for the series to converge to something. And number 25, find a sub 4 of the geometric sequence if a sub 2 is 16 and a sub 3 is -32. So we have this. Now, because they are 2 terms in a row, I can find the common ratio by taking -32 over 16. So I get -32 divided by 16 is -2. And so then what I did is I just went, okay, so we have 16, -32, multiply, because we just need the next term. So this is a sub 2, this is a sub 3, so the next one is a sub 4. So we just multiply -32 times -2, and that's where the 64 comes from. So that one you can just kind of figure it that way. So hopefully that helps as you went through and did that. Your assignment today is just study. So go over maybe old notes, go over this, anything that you want. If you want to ask me any questions, you can look through the textbook, you can ask me questions, and I'd be happy to do them, create a video, or whatever you guys need from me. And then our final will start tomorrow. I probably will do it in 2 days, 2 sections of that.